You might want to watch the video all the way through. I have some very important things to share with you. Some interesting things with the sequence counts and other important things. This is the daily chart of the NASDAQ. I told you back over here when we were selling off in the short week with the jobs report, looking for a bottom. Actually for NASDAQ to go back up and fill the gap at 20,400. S&P to go make a new high. S&P is making a new high. NASDAQ's not at that 20,400 area. I still think it'll probably get there. We continue to have a bullish reversal of conditions following that bottom. I was looking for, we got the bullish inside day. It was confirmed with the CPI data, got back above the 10-period moving average, and we've been going higher, and the momentum remains bullish. Signals remain bullish. The topping process is forming. That will be followed by a reversal. Usher in the bear market. I think that could happen. Top could complete over the next 3 weeks. Very good chance based on what we're seeing in the weekly and the monthly time frame on the S&P 500. Doji today, that's what I'm watching, is to see does NASDAQ just go parabolic and fill the gap. We're about over two. We need 2%, a 2% move higher to reach that 20,400 area. We're about 400 points away from it. I think you could see a peak either late September, early to mid-October. Very, very possible we do it by late September here. We're on into that first week of October. This is the last full week. This coming Monday will be the last trading day of September on the 30th. And next week we'll be moving into the October trading month 1 week from right now. By the end of this week, we get the inflation data, the PCE inflation data next week. First week of October, you get at the end of the week, you get the jobs report. It'd be a catalyst that rattles the market. So here, again, signals remain bullish. We're above the 10-period moving average. No red bars yet. Again, we're going to be watching. Do we just go parabolic? Are we consolidating kind of sideways here and we go parabolic towards filling the gap? Or do we pull back and then fill it? We'll see what happens, but I think it gets filled. We're getting a red bar on the weekly chart here for the awesome oscillator. Could get a green bar before the week ends, or could get a red bar followed by a green bar if we still attempt to fill that gap. My guess is we will. I could be wrong about that. We don't have to fill the gap. Guess is we will. Weekly chart for the S&P. No red bar here, but you can see the divergence that I've been warning about before we ever got the green bars. I started talking about this divergence developing after this sell-off. The S&P is likely going to form another reference point of a divergence, go make a new high, which was what I've been talking about for a very long time. Getting it. We're moving to new highs. We actually tested the previous peak at 57.33 today, closed at 57.32.93, so we closed right at that level. But we did move slightly above it on an intraday basis. I think this is going to complete in over the next 3 weeks. I think it could be sooner rather than later. It could be that we get a top this week or next week based on the weekly divergences, the monthly divergences, the trend lines I'm watching, showing you all the stuff I'm looking at. It's so overbought and hitting major resistance levels. We're getting recession warning signals. What do you think is going to happen? It starts to pivot. I saw this one post on social media. And there's no possible way we're going to have a bear market. Everybody thinks we're going to have a bear market. Are you kidding me? Everybody thinks there's going to be no recession, a soft landing. Curd believes that the rate cuts are bullish, not bearish. We're now moving into this next leg of the bear market. Sorry, the bull market. We had the bear market already. We dropped 27%, 27.5% in 2022. Told us what wasn't going to happen. The bear market, it's over. We're now in the bull market. And what planet is this guy from? I mean, everywhere I go on social media, AI, we're going to just keep going. And then, with the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin bull market is now going to go with Fed cuts. And the market is likely topping process, and Bitcoin already peaked back in March and is diverging with the S&P 500 in a topping process. Same thing now as it was back at the tech bubble. If you think market is going to have a bear market, there's any risk of decline, and if you think the market's overvalued, then you're just a moron. You must still believe the world is flat. These people are absolutely amazing. Talking about how it's almost this soft landing nonsense is almost like a cult. Nevertheless, I digress. Look, we've had these divergences I was looking for. I think this is going to complete either this week, next week, or the following week. I think in the next 3 weeks, you're going to see this thing finish. It could be sooner rather than later. Top this week or next week, and then I think you're going to see these divergences begin to play out. Red bar here like on NASDAQ. So again, I still think NASDAQ goes to 20,400. That could carry S&P higher. The trend lines I've been talking about, just underneath them here, 2733 peak. I don't know what the high was today. It was just slightly higher. S&P gets a doji in the daily time frame like NASDAQ. No red bar here, but again, we've got these multiple point versions is forming on some indicators. Again, signals remain bullish. Same thing. We were looking for a bottom over here. I told you that with the jobs report. We got the bullish inside day confirmation of CPI. We got the bullish reversal of conditions on September 12th. And again, signals have been bullish ever since we've been above the 10-period moving average since the CPI report. Rallied with both the CPI and the PPI report. Looking for new highs. We now have it. Now our fourth session after the Fed pivot. 2001, we peaked 19 days after it. 2007, 17 days after it. Could be sooner though, because in the weekly time frame, already making new highs. In 2007, right after the Fed pivot, we didn't make immediate highs, but after we were above previous 2007 peak, 2 weeks later, we peaked in 2022. So 2 weeks, and this is the second week right here. So it's possible to see that happen here or thereafter. So we'll be watching what happens here with these divergences like on the MACD and so forth. S&P daily here, signals remain bullish. We're still above the 10-period. We get another doji. We've been consolidating. We'll see what happens. I want to show you what's going on with the sequence counts. It was down 3% today. Again, moving closer to that 200. Again, if S&P tries to go higher, should NASDAQ try to fill the gap at 20,400, then I'll be looking at the lower band here and the 200. The 50, the green line, is still above the 200. Again, that's bad. That's for the VIX longer term, suggesting that the rally is going to end up producing a reversal. If we do drop lower, we could still see a divergence develop on the VIX with the previous low. We close below the lower band, but the bands are tightening, suggesting something eventually is going to happen. It could drag out a little while. It could be a few weeks. Very well could be a top over the next 3 weeks on the S&P 500. Be sooner rather than later. Support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. Follow the link. It'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want. A lot of time and effort to do this. If you like the signals, you like the charts, please let me know that by helping out today. You could take a moment to step up to the plate. I would really, really appreciate that. I thank you for your consideration for that. After initially getting some volatility surrounding consumer sentiment, falling the most in 3 years, it still rebounded with gains. This is our fourth session after the Fed pivot. And I think over the next 3 weeks, we will see a peak in the market, a top, and a reversal start in that 3-week period, or see the peak and then shortly right after that see the reversal begin. Again, give or take, I'm just using the average ballpark of the last two market tops when we got the first cut. It peaked 19 days after in 2001, 17 days after in 2007, but sooner like we did in 2022. But the S&P is doing what I thought it would do and make new highs. NASDAQ's rallying towards the gap fill. As I told you, I'm looking for that gap fill at 20,400. More about that later. The Dow continues to make new highs. The P as well. The Dow up 0.2%, up 83 points. Watch what I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be talking about the 9 count sequence count on the Dow and the S&P 500. P was up. The video all the way through. The S&P was up 0.25%, up 14.36. NASDAQ was up 5.6%. The Russell was up 0.17. The VIX was down 3.15%, hovering just under 15.5. Quickly, we had consumer confidence fall the most in 3 years. It's another warning sign of a recession. When you see consumer confidence or the consumer sentiment indexes when you start seeing them start dropping dramatically. More so with consumer sentiment. I've shown you these recessionary indicators before. Maybe I'll try to do it later this week or over the weekend. This is another warning sign. Here comes recession. The largest decline in 3 years. That caused the 2-year Treasury yields to fall down after that report. I'll make you aware of that we're getting these 9 counts. Yesterday we had a perfected sell signal on the Dow. And again, I've been talking about the resistance on the Dow in the weekly time frame, in the monthly time frame. We got the divergences going on there in the daily time frame. A 9 count sell signal yesterday. We went higher today and we got a doji. The 9 counts price exhaustion up and down. And they tell you either you're going to get an immediate pullback by a trend extension, or you're going to get prices going a little higher and get a pullback and a trend extension. The 9 count immediately marks a reversal, or you go a little higher and get a reversal. Be a trend extension or a reversal. Now completes a 9-9 signal on the Dow, which is a reversal pattern. Now, again, the 9 count, when it shows up, it doesn't mean, oh, pullback reversal is immediately going to happen. It's not what that means. Again, like over here, you get the 9 count. We went higher. Went higher for several sessions. Then we got it on the Dow. Counts aren't perfect. They just show price exhaustion. We got the 9 count here. We can still go higher, but it could play out immediately. Maybe you just go a day or two higher, and then you turn. Again, over the next 3 weeks, looking for a reversal in the market. I'm looking for a top reversal to start. Happen sooner rather than later. Drag out for a few weeks. Now, 4 sessions since we've had the first rate cut, which again gave us a fake topping tail there on the Dow and the S&P 500. The candlestick was not confirmed or got a follow through. It was negated by closing back above the high of the candle, and that's now given us a doji, and we've gotten this 9 count. So again, we still may go higher, something like what we had over here, but telling us prices are starting to get tired. It may play out immediately. And even if we pull back, even if we start to sell off, it may just be a pullback followed by a trend extension. Again, this could drag out for the next 3 weeks. Again, when we topped 2001, it was 19 sessions. When we topped out after the first cut, 2007, it was 17 days later. It happened sooner rather than later, but here we are 4 sessions after the Fed pivot. New highs last week on the Dow and the S&P 500. It very well could be. Try to peak this week sooner rather than later. So we're watching for clues, but this is showing price exhaustion. So I wanted to show it to you there on the Dow as we're hitting all the resistance levels I've talked about in the monthly and the weekly time frame. We've got those divergences forming monthly, the weekly, and the daily time frame. Dow daily chart here. And NASDAQ, again, I still think it's going to come up here and fill this gap at 20,400. We're up to bar 4 here. So it could continue, I keep saying, and go parabolic like this, or parabolic like this, or this. These parabolic moves, and it could just continue, and we get there sooner rather than later. It could drag out over the next few weeks. Pull back and then continue onward and upward. It could play out a number of ways, but I do think we're probably coming up here. Could I be wrong about that? Yes. Signals all began to turn back to bearish. We have NVIDIA helping out, and I'll try to show you the chart. We have NVIDIA helping out NASDAQ today. A nice move on NVIDIA. I think NVIDIA is going to fill the gap, and I think that will take NASDAQ back up here. Now, the question is will the Dow and the S&P peak before we see the NASDAQ fill that gap? We'll see what happens. But here, again, when I called the top over here, to warn you it was going to happen because we were going up into those trend lines, and then we are going to get the CPI data. It validated that as a top on my signals with the lines in the reversal. And again, the very day of the top here was with the 9 count. I warned about the 9 count before we ever got it. I also knew that the very next day I thought we had peaked, rally back up, which is exactly what happened. And again, we had a 9-9 signal. That's what the Dow has on it. That produced an immediate reversal. We had 9 count here. We went a little bit higher the next day, and then we got the sell-off. I think we're in an ABC move here. And yes, as it's not done. And you can see currently we're up to bar 4 there. So my guess is If this count can complete, we'll go parabolic and fill that gap. We would have to go just a little bit more than 2% to reach that level, about 400 points. I think you're going to establish a lower high. So we're on a 4 of a 9 with the NASDAQ. Your bar would have to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. We've kind of been consolidating here, so don't know that this count continues. We may pull back and then continue, but my guess is we're going to eventually make it here. It's possible if NASDAQ does fill this gap that's when S&P peaks, but S&P could peak ahead of that. I wanted to make you aware of this. This is NVIDIA. We got a 4% move, just under 4% move out of NVIDIA today, bouncing off the 100 period right here, bouncing off of the green line, the 50, declining 50 and the 20, popping back above this red line, the 10. NVIDIA already filled the gap over here, made another lower high. I think that NVIDIA will fill the gap over here, but I do think it's probably got an ABC structure, very probably similar to the NASDAQ and the semiconductors. I think a move to fill that gap and probably overthrowing this level just a bit could have a NASDAQ to fill that gap at 20,400. This is the start of a stronger move here, like what we had over here. Then again, maybe NASDAQ does that this week or next week. Nice bounce on NVIDIA, helping NASDAQ today. Again, I believe that NVIDIA peaked. Let me just move this back over here on June 20th. I believe NVIDIA's already topped. NASDAQ's already topped. These are counter trends right now for both. The S&P, unlike the Dow got a perfected sell signal yesterday. The S&P did not. You see how there's no P above it? Do you see that? There's no P like over here above it. Perfected 9. Why? Because the 8 or 9 bar is not above bar 7. 8 or 9 has to be the high of the count. It was still above the bar from 4 bars ago. Every bar has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago, but 8 or 9 has to be the high of the count. It was not. The peak over here, 57.33. 57.33, and we closed below that level. So we got a 9 count, but it was not perfected. It was perfected today. We did push up above the bar 7 peak at 57.33. Remember when we negated the topping tail over here? We tried these attempts to clear over the overhead resistance, and it failed, and then we did it after the Fed pivot. Here we got above 57.33. We went to 57.35, 2 points above this level, but we closed just under the peak over here at 57.33. We closed just under 57.33 at 57.32.93 or something like that in the high 57.32 area. Almost 57.33, but just under it. And the signal's now perfected. Okay, it's now a perfected sell signal. So same thing with the Dow. Is it going to play out immediately? And if it plays out immediately, do you get a pullback and then a trend extension? Or a big pullback and a trend extension? Or you see this drag out for a little while? Or again, a mild pullback and then a trend extension? Drags out for a few weeks? Or do we start an immediate reversal with now being a perfected signal? Do we start an immediate reversal? Market top at some point this week here, overthrow this level just a little bit, and mark a top. And again, if the 9 count doesn't mean it's going to happen right now, because again, you can overthrow the level. Here we ended up forming a divergence over time that gave us this. Here we got the 9 count, didn't play out immediately. We went a little bit higher, but it was followed by nearly a 10% drop. Just telling you, with today's session, we've now got a perfected 9 signal showing price exhaustion. Doesn't mean we can't continue to go higher like over here, or again, here's this 9 count. We went a little bit higher with these highs, and then we turned. Well, could be the same, but it's very possible that we see a peak in the next 3 weeks. Could come sooner rather than later. It could come this week. It could come next week. I've shown you the divergences on the weekly chart and the monthly chart. Just want to make you aware, if we now have a perfected sell signal, start seeing the S&P start closing below the bar from 4 bars ago, then again, start a pullback or a reversal. But like I said, I'm looking for a top. It's going to happen here over the next 3 weeks in all likelihood, give or take, but we have a shot of it happening sooner rather than later. The recession signals have flashed in the market. Is at some point going to peak and begin to price that in. People telling us we're going to have this soft landing, recessions anymore. The Fed won't allow them to happen. We don't have bear markets anymore. We've already had it in 2020. The sell-off they told us it wasn't going to happen. It's already done. We're living in fantasy land. We are about to have a recession. Wanted to make you aware. Look, you're getting a 9 count here. It's now perfected today because we're now getting the intraday push or close. We got an intraday push. We got the push above bar 7, the high of the count. So again, reversal could happen this way, a top and a start of a reversal this week, next week, anytime. But over the next 3 weeks, I think it's very, very possible. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Dow got that perfected 9 count sell signal yesterday. Went higher, got a doji today. You still got these divergences forming and resistance going on there in the monthly time frame. The Dow's just overthrowing this upper channel line on the weekly chart, hitting major resistance in the monthly time frame, but you've got this multiple point divergence in the weekly time frame developing there on the RSI. So again, it's likely going to produce a reversal and this larger simple divergence here on the Dow. I shouldn't say simple because we had it roll over there and then turn back up. But you can see what I'm looking at with this divergence. So again, some suggesting the Dow is going to soon reverse. Dow is forming divergences on the 60-minute chart with the MACD and the RSI. So again, watching that 9 count that formed in the daily time frame carefully. Our doji here today to see what becomes of that in the daily time frame. Again, if the NVIDIA rally can continue, that could help NASDAQ reach this level sooner rather than later. Could see it happen this week, next week. Guess is that's where we're going to see the NASDAQ peak out at, just overthrowing this area here, but not exceeding the peak over here. So it could overthrow this level and still get our double top pattern. We're reaching extremes here. If we pull back, it may take longer and then continue higher. But it could be, if we just go parabolic like we did over here, we could reach that level this week or next week. Here it is on the 60-minute chart. Again, some divergences have formed, but they've only given us these pullbacks. We attempted to clear the trend line. We got divergences. It only gave us pullbacks and fake breakouts. Then we got the real one the day after the Fed. I told you I was eventually looking Fed pivot rally that would take us to this level. And again, I think we're making our way towards that area. We may get a bigger pullback. We may just go parabolic, but I'm looking for an ABC structure, and I think that we'll get this here over the next 3 weeks, and it could be sooner rather than later. Again, I've talked about the S&P and the weekly chart. I'm showing you the monthly divergence. Well, here's the weekly divergence that's developing, and again, we could end up hitting this upper channel line, possibly. I've excluded the shadows. Maybe we include it. But again, that could be a level S&P reaches. I'm also showing you that monthly trend line going back to 1929. Again, I think when this completes, I think we'll begin a reversal, and that could be as soon as this week. We're hitting a new high right now. Could go a little bit higher, like we did over here. You popped up above this level for 2 weeks, and in that second week, you started the reversal. Did the same thing in 2007. We're popping above this high over here in July last week. I think that we could see peak here in the next 3 weeks, maybe as soon as this week or next week, but it could go as long as 3 weeks. I think these divergences will play out, but again, I think we have a very similar looking pattern, as I've talked about, to what we have going on over here. I've talked about that at great length of detail. I've talked about the similarities with the MACD over here, which again, right now we've seen the MACD turn back above the signal line. So again, good chance we're forming and eventually complete a topping process here. On the daily chart, the RSI topping process looks very similar to the structure we had over here. The 2022 top, again, higher for about a week and a half, and then we reversed after making new highs. Same thing in 2007, but 2007, after the Fed pivot, rallied 17 sessions, peaking. So again, I keep saying over the next 3 weeks, I'm looking for a topping process. It may take a little bit longer, may happen sooner rather than later. Do you think it will soon complete? Again, the S&P got a 9 count yesterday, a perfected signal today. So it's possible it turns immediately. It could go higher. We have examples, the topping process surrounding the Fed pivot, and then we also have a process surrounding the 2022 high. So again, over the next 3 weeks, I think we're going to happen. Could happen sooner rather than later. But again, we got above the July peak. I told you that we are going to go make a new high. What happened? We went and made a new high. I think NASDAQ's going to hit 20,400, so S&P could still go higher. It's also just as possible S&P peaks, the Dow, or both. Still see NASDAQ go try to fill that gap, help of NVIDIA, but we may see the top on S&P and the Dow. Out of that, maybe with it. We'll see what happens if we start going parabolic. We're only 2%, over 2%. Higher, and we fill that gap, so we'll be watching. NASDAQ broke over, or S&P broke overhead resistance, came back tested it, and we hold above the 10 period. Signals remain bullish. We're watching for the next time momentum shifts and we drop back below the 10 period moving average. The red line right there. Momentum's coming up to extremes again. Could still form a divergence here, and we do have the upper Bollinger Band directly overhead. We tagged it here, and we've kind of went sideways with the breakout over here. Got above it a couple of times, and that led to the sell-off, the decline over here. At extremes, but not rolling over yet, and again, still bullish. Get a perfected 9 signal with today's session. Yesterday on the Dow, the S&P, again, we broke up above the previous high, filled the gap, back tested it. So again, we could still go the momentum line and the momentum cloud still acting as support. Got these divergences, could see a triple divergence form here. Quadruple, we had this divergence, then we had this one, a triple, and then a quadruple. We could get one more if the rally should continue. We're only 4 days past the pivot, so it very well could. Be surprised to see a peak this week or next week. Those divergences carve out on the weekly charts. I'm continuing to monitor these divergences. We'll see if we're moving to a new high. The RSI is now. RSI still might go higher. Part of divergence in the more recent price action, but multiple one forming here on the MACD. It still may not be done. I told you I believed S&P would make new highs. It is. Signals remain bullish.